So good evening, everyone. I'm pretty excited to be hosting the session today. I actually miss MITF. They've always been family to me. Right now, I'm currently leading business growth at TradeLink. It's a B2B e-marketplace connecting international and regional business sellers to MENA-based buyers. Super excited to be hosting this session because what we will try to do is come out with some tangible takeaways on how entrepreneurs can adapt, launch and grow their startups during this period of time of COVID, and how this will look like post-COVID, obviously. We will touch on some of the challenges that they face running their business, from staying relevant to hiring and firing people to coping with longer lead times when it comes to closing deals, to managing cash flow and fundraising, and most importantly, how to stay probably positive in the midst of the negativity. I have Naji Saloom joining me from the US. He's an old friend and a great supporter of MITF initiative since the very early days. He helped coach and mentor many startups in Silicon Valley and the region. He's ex-500 startups, ex-Google. He's an entrepreneur who built basically and sold many startups. And his latest venture is Candy.io, which is a web app that connects offline businesses to online customers. Naji, it's great having you. How are you?
I'm doing great, thank you. It's good morning for me. It's still early.
Good morning.
But it's fine.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you for taking the time. Naji, as an entrepreneur yourself, you obviously have a 3-year-old startup, Candy.io, and you are facing the same risks that any entrepreneurs face from during regular days. So from hiring the right people to market validation to fundraising, and right now your startup currently focuses on linking the offline world to the online world, which is a natural move to a lot of businesses. What was COVID's impact on your business?
So a few years ago, even when I was at Tango, the big video calling and messaging app that was the #1 back then, I saw the data. The data was pointing into people connecting to businesses, and I created a bot before anyone in the Valley created a bot. I created a bot on Tango because I saw that people will want to connect the fastest way possible to businesses, which means businesses who are normally not communicating online or not connected online, they're going to have this channel to reach directly and engage directly with customers. So I built a business around that. And the idea of these kind of businesses that change things, they take time for adoption. It requires a whole mindset shift among customers, among businesses, among decision makers to jump on board. So we promoted this product and this business globally. And recently, we decided to focus it on companies that want to sell online, not just connect online. And we focused it essentially on, right before the pandemic, which is crazy, on connecting to POS companies, the point of sale companies that are offering the solution on offline, like for restaurants and coffee shop at the cashier. And we're offering this user-facing layer on top of it, so people can order online directly connected to the POS, basically helping these offline businesses sell online. And we were focusing on restaurants. So there was a division in the camp, people who loved it, say, yes, we can see how this can help us. And people who said, no, we don't want to sell online. We love the human interaction. We don't want to replace that. And we don't want to change the systems internally. And then the pandemic hit. And then everyone was forced to consider online. They're scrambling to find ways to sell online, changing the systems. The challenge is that, and I'm talking about here in the US, obviously it's a global impact. It's accentuated in different markets. In the US, the lockdown, the major hit of the pandemic on the retailers has been severe, very severe, to the point where it's still ambiguous. Many businesses are closing for good. Others who have the option to open up, they're not willing to open because they don't know the the risk reward benefits yet. It's additional cost if they open up and hire more people, and they don't know if people are going to come back, because we've been bombarded for the first 2 months heavily with how bad and how contagious the virus is. So it scared everyone to the point where people are literally scared to go out. And I'm not talking about everyone, because you have a clan that's supporting the president who are even opposing to wearing the mask. But for those who are taking it seriously, they're scared. And this translates into the business being slowed down. So it did impact my business, as it impacted a lot of businesses. And I had to adjust way before the lockdown even. I could see where the world is going. I had to adjust and put things into practice so that when the lockdown happens, I'm more prepared. And I think these are the lessons that we could share with the audience today.
Yeah. Awesome. So, I mean, obviously, it's a very tough period for a lot of like companies, startups particularly. During this period of time of cash crunch, do you think it's a good or bad thing for businesses? Because some argue it's bad because it puts companies obviously in tough situations, but others see it as an opportunity to being forced to innovate. So, what's your take on that?
Innovation, in the absolute sense, is always useful. It's the commercialization of the innovation that is more critical at this point. It's direct implementation of how you're going to innovate and adapt that's going to decide whether you're going to survive or not. In normal times, during downturns is when a lot of innovation happens. Who really benefits from innovation? It's not those that are cash strapped. It's not those that are depending on a long sales cycle. It's those that have a very well-defined small product that's addressing a most pressing need at the moment of downturn. What the pandemic did in the world right now is brought down the needs of people from the high order needs all the way to the most basic needs. So if you look at Maslow's needs, the pyramid of needs, you have all the way on the top is self-actualization, means it's what people aspire to achieve in life, where they feel most fulfilled. And all the way at the bottom, you have the most basic survival needs, which is water, food, shelter. I could share the screen for you to illustrate where the world's moving right now into.
Yes, please.
So this is the hierarchy of needs of Maslow. It's a very basic psychological representation of human needs. You start with the physiological needs all the way up to self-actualization. So the more developed the market, the country is, the more you go up. You have people striving to be here. It's, you know, the first world's problem are mostly here. Here is where your most basic animal instinct needs kick in. What the pandemic did is brought people all the way from the top all the way to the bottom. So right now you're playing in these two most bottom layers. Unless your innovation is addressing these two things, you're gonna face a lot of ignorance in the market. People are gonna ignore you because you're not addressing their most pressing critical needs. In usual times, your business has to do that. But in usual times, you're addressing probably here. Yeah. Right now, you have to go all the way down. You have to address the most basic critical needs for survival, literally survival.
100%. So absolutely. I think, I mean, buyers' patterns are definitely influenced. And I think, you know, a startup should stay relevant by answering the customer's needs. So how do you think an entrepreneur should work on realigning, you know, their business and their business model in light of this, I mean, the new priorities for the buyers, in your opinion?
So it's a major overhaul of the business. It's not just understanding the customer's need or readdressing the customer's need or realigning the business to the needs. This transformation touches the processes internally, touches the business model, touches the team. Most importantly, touches the cash flow. What is your burn rate as a company? And here I want to emphasize again the distinction between a startup and a business. A lot of people are in the mindset of a startup. I want to start up something. The minute you switch it to, I want to start a business, I want to launch a business that makes money, that addresses a real need, that offers value, then your mindset shifts from, I'm a startup, I need external funding, to I'm running a business that it's going to be self-sufficient. So in this context, you have to think about, what is your burn rate? How long can you survive with this current climate? Which means, do you have enough oxygen to last many months without income?
Yeah, absolutely.
Which means, unfortunately, you have to adjust your team and your staff. You have to go back to, again, your own pyramid survival. How much of your staff is critical at this point? And how much of it can take on more roles so that you can adjust to the new climate that is enforced upon you? And we can talk more about specifically the sales process and people's mindset and psychology of buying right now.
Perfect. Let's talk first about the team and people, and then definitely we have to tap into the sales and the fundraising and other important topics. So on team and people, so any startup, the people on the team can make it or break it. And currently, a lot of founders are forced to take very tough decisions when it comes to their team, either to let go people or cut salaries. And it's not just one person that you're letting go, obviously, there's a family behind that person. So it's not a tough situation. It's not an easy situation to be in. How are you dealing with this in your startup? And what is the advice that you give entrepreneurs who are going through this dilemma right now?
It's very difficult.
Yeah.
I don't wish upon anyone to be in a situation where they have to ask people to be let go. It's psychologically draining for those who really care, as founders of and CEOs of company, for those who really care, because a lot of people don't really care about hiring. It hits you. Yeah. The way I look at it is survival. In normal times, startup is like flying an airplane that's going down, and you have to find the tools and you have to fix it so that it can go up again. And in this climate, it's really literally on fire and going down. So you have to extinguish the fire and you have to figure out a way to solve it. And if you go on a plane, you have all these different instructions flight attendants offer you. The one I like to give usually to companies is the oxygen mask. When there's a problem with air pressure and you have family, they don't tell you put the oxygen mask on the kids first. They tell you put it on yourself first, so you can rescue yourself, so you can rescue the family immediately after. Because if you don't save yourself, you can't save your family. Same thing in a company. If you're not solving for the core of the company to survive, there's no way you're going to be able to help everyone else. So you can keep everyone and maybe survive 3 more months, or you can do some changes and adaptation to the climate, survive 9 more months, and then during these 9 more months, you'll fix the business and hire these people back. The mindset is survival of the core, of the nucleus of the company, with the positive mindset that we're going to talk about to eventually overcome this pandemic in order to hire these people back again. It's almost selfish, but it's very positively tuned selfish, if you want, selfishness.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's very tough, and it's tough to keep, obviously you have to let go of some people, you have to keep some, but those who you're keeping, they have to stay motivated. So how do you do that? Especially now there's remote working, everyone working in a startup, they feel that they're not in a safe place. So they might be looking elsewhere where it's safer. So how do you, retain the good talent that you decide to keep? And how do you motivate them, especially with remote working and, having to deal with all the uncertainties?
So we're all faced with limited information at this point, everyone, scientists, business people, everyone. We don't know what's coming. We don't know what's ahead. The news is completely misleading. Some say about a quick recovery. Some talk about very slow recovery. The point is, there's a lot of uncertainty. And you as a leader, your job is to navigate the team through this uncertainty. And that's why you have to be critical about your finances. You have to know exactly what is your burn, how many more months you have for survival. And once you adapt your team according to those numbers, you can offer some sort of a security for the team that I'm with you guys, we're in this together, we're gonna overcome this, we have enough money for us to survive 18 months, 2 years, whatever, so that we can come out of this stronger. As much as I want to rely on you guys, you can rely on me to keep you safe in this climate, in this environment. What people want is literally safety right now and security, that
Absolutely.
they're not going to be they're not going to be in a situation where it's going to be very tough on them to figure out what's going on. Because again, the climate, we're going to talk about hiring, is very, very different right now. You have all of a sudden a global pool of talent that is available for you. So your job is to give this confidence that your team is still with you, that you're with them, that you're in this together.
Absolutely. Like giving that sense is extremely important. So you mentioned, I mean, being able to sustain the business, and obviously sales is one key important factor. It's really, you know, being able to cope with long lead times to close deals. So how do you think entrepreneurs should deal with that, right? They talk to a client, he's willing to sign, he's taking his sweet time, and it's kind of like, you know, pretty critical for the entrepreneur. So how should an entrepreneur deal with you know, sales process and going about it?
So you have two kind of businesses at this stage, and I'm talking business. I'm not talking about people, companies, or startups that have a product that is not commercially ready yet, right? You have businesses that have a product that can be sold globally, and you have products that can be sold only locally, like physical product, hardware product that needs to have a warehouse. For the service kind of business that have a product that can be sold globally, like the software, for example. What this pandemic offered you right now is a pool of global audiences, global customers. The way to navigate through a slower sales cycle is to expand your top of the funnel, to open up to not just markets or leads that are within your vicinity, but now all of a sudden you have a global pool of companies that pre-pandemic were not necessarily open to deal with businesses remotely. But now, because Zoom world, we're living in a Zoom world right now, was enforced on them, all of a sudden it's not awkward for them to do a sales process or sales conversation through a conference call, which means if you're in the Middle East, you can now do businesses with companies or leads in the US, in Australia, in Mexico, in Japan. So it starts with an intention and a mindset to expand your horizon, to expand your pool of potential customers, to increase the pipeline. Because again, everyone's going to be very slow. The reason why they're slow right now, everyone is in a survival mode. They're scrambling to figure out what is it that we're going to clean up from the business? What is it that's critical at this stage? Even more so, what are the free options we can utilize today to navigate through this whole process? Even if it's not the perfect product, but we need to survive. So the offers that we can get from companies, the lower the prices, the free options, removing elements from our business that require payment is enforcing a much longer sales cycle and much more difficult approach to collecting money from clients. That's why you need to have 10x maybe the leads in your business that you used to have before the pandemic.
100%. Yeah, for like 1% to convert. So it's very hard. Even like at TradeLink, you know, we face this a lot of like the offline, because we're dealing with B2B, right? Businesses to businesses. So a lot of like the FMCG players are offline, and having a platform to be online is important. But not only that, you know, if we're talking about FMCG, we're talking about restaurants, we're talking about cafes, they're struggling. So giving them a way where they are able to really be able to afford to purchase, or giving them some good credit terms, is something that is extremely important. But also, you know, the sellers are not able to do that simply because they don't have clarity on when the payment can be done. And that leads to very tough payment terms, and then hotels, restaurants, cafes to shut down. Okay, so I think I want to talk a bit about fundraising and the struggle that startups are facing when it comes to approaching investors. So a lot of the startups right now are struggling with a runway of a few months. Existing investors or their current investors are torn between bridging to allow the survival of the startup for a few more months, or looking at other opportunities currently, you know, for more relevant startups to the current situation, or even not investing. How do you think investors should react, and how do you think entrepreneurs should approach investors during this pandemic?
On the investor side, everyone is playing a very cautious game right now to understand exactly what's going to happen. And my perspective on this is, before the vaccine, nothing's going to happen. Nothing's going to majorly change, because it's a global pandemic. When you open up travel to a certain country, you're opening up the option of having another spread of the virus. So unless there are systems in place from the two borders, then you're going to have a problem. You're going to have a risk of contagion again. And as long as there's risk of contagion, people are going to still feel there's still risk. The same way you're surviving, investors are playing the survival game right now. They're being very cautious about where they're going to spend the money. And this is driving the valuation down. This is driving the investors to be very picky about where do they want to put the money right now. On the positive side, if you're in the e-selling, e-shopping, e-commerce space, it's a market where now you have people buying online, given the limitation of buying offline. So unless you're offering something of value, of need, in the e-commerce space, you're going to have to be very, very patient. You have to be very cautious about your finances. Investors are looking for proof that this business is viable. It is a COVID-friendly business, which means it's surviving in these downturns, which means going to boom when the pandemic is resolved. So, and they're taking their time as well, because they're playing a very cautious game. On the startup world, on the founders side, it's tough because access to money became much more difficult right now. And the requirements, the criteria to get funded are much, much higher, because they need a lot of proof that this business is sustainable, is viable, is profitable, there's a big need for it. And if you're playing it correctly, you're going to see a big traction in business. So now you have more investors at your hand than what is used to, because much less competition. So that's why I go back to being very cautious, being very finance driven, numbers driven, and stripping your company to the score so you can extend the burn of the survival and lifestyle of your business.
Absolutely. I just would like to encourage everyone to basically write their questions so that we're able to answer them. Naji is an entrepreneur. He would love to, he's like, when we started the conversation, he's like, please leave it open to questions from the audience, because it's very important for us to answer your questions. So we'd like to encourage everyone to do so. Naji, I want to discuss a bit the government point, right? So SMEs obviously is the biggest engine of employment in like any country. And there are a lot of reports coming out that saying that a big percentage of those SMEs are shutting down soon. Obviously, there's, you know, the stimulus packages that governments are doing. But what do you think the role of the government should be in this? As an entrepreneur, what would you like to see the government doing more of, or doing?
So it's a big question. It deserves a whole webinar on its own. What the benefits of the stimulus packages is that it kind of restored it slowed down the downturn of the economy, stabilize it to a certain point, and it gave some sort of a oxygen surplus to those that are deprived of this oxygen for them to survive. for the most part, the stimulus packages are also driven by political agendas. And in the case of the US, it's clear that the president has an election year. They want to create a story that satisfies their base to encourage the economy to go back and thrive again. On one hand, you have money that's being poured in the market to help companies survive, to help people survive as well. The real issue with this is what? There's going to be a point where the stimulus packages are going to stop hitting the banks, hitting the bank accounts, which is happening in end of July in the US. There was some rent relief in the market so that if you're a tenant, you don't have to pay rent, you can postpone it, not eliminate it, postpone it. That's also heading July, end of July. There's been unemployment stimulus packages to help people who've been furloughed or laid off to get some money from the government. That's also ending in July. What is really happening? Businesses who needed to hire more people right now can't, because these people are relying on unemployment income from the government. They make more from the government right now than from the businesses that were supposed to hire them. So why would they join these companies? Mm-hmm. Rent is due in August 1st. What are they going to do? Money is not going to come from a stimulus package anymore, and they still need to survive. What is going to happen? Unless the economy is, from its core, fixed, is recovering to be able to hire these people back, and you have liquidity circulating in the market, I fear we're hitting a potential global recession that's going to impact everyone. That what you think is happening right now is going to be, you're going to look at it as just a start, because what's happening is a fake in stabilization of the economy. On one hand, you have the benefits of a stimulus package to help survive the economy. On the other hand, when it's going to end and the economy hasn't recovered, it's going to be a big problem. What I would have preferred to happen is that not to offer these big fat stimulus packages on a very short-term basis, more so.
Naji, I think we stopped hearing you.
Really? Can you hear me now? Can you guys hear me, or just Katrina?
Yes. Yeah. No, okay. I can hear you now.
What I would have preferred to happen is that extend these stimulus packages. Instead of getting, let's say, $4,000 a month, you can get $2,000. But now, instead of 3 months, now it's 8 months, 9 months. Because the economy hasn't recovered, because there's still no cure to the vaccine, to the virus. Vaccine, and let me just tell a story about the vaccine before we can open up the Q&A. People are talking vaccine. I hope we're going to have the vaccine sometime in beginning of Q1. Maybe not.
Yeah.
Realistically, I think if we're going to have the vaccine, it's going to happen around Q2, maybe beginning of Q3. But what does that mean? Which means they were able to manufacture the vaccine and produce enough of it so that it can be sold in the market. And you're going to face globally another war, a political war of who gets the vaccine first. Which countries get the vaccine first? What is the price on the vaccine? Who can afford it, who cannot afford it? How much of it is going to be distributed globally, and how much is going to be concentrated in the markets that's being manufacturing those vaccines, which is the US, Germany, maybe in some other markets. You're going to have another problem of fake vaccine, which means the virus is not going to be resolved instantly. This means the minute the vaccine is found, expect another 18, 24 months for it to be spread globally. I think this virus is going to extend at least another 3 years. So, and it's not going to be as severe as now. It's just that the reality of what's happening right now is going to extend for another 2 to 3 years, for it to be in the hands of everyone. At that point, that's another opportunity for businesses to innovate. Is how do I know I'm doing business with you, Katrina? How do I know that you have the vaccine? What's the proof?
Yeah.
Do you have a bracelet? Do you have an ID? Do you have a chip? How do I know? How do I have the confidence that when you enter my store, I'm doing business with you, or we're closely sitting in a stadium, that you're not contagious? How do I know? So you start projecting where the world's moving, what life is going to look like. And you start thinking, well, that's going to be a problem. If I solve it now, it's going to take us a year to come up with a solution. Maybe it's going to be the right time for me to start thinking of it right now. So again, it's survival. It's the basics of dynamics among different groups of people together for the economy to restore. So with that said, let's open up the floor for questions, I think. So we have, yeah.
Yes. So I'm still waiting for questions. I have a question that I got offline. What is your advice to entrepreneurs that are looking at e-commerce right now that everyone is talking about e-commerce and launching a business in the e-commerce space?
So what's selling right now is online products. What is the challenge of e-commerce? You have two different types of e-commerce. You have it's a matrix. You have products that are shipped, and you have products that are instantly distributed, like e-products, software, solutions. When you're selling physical products, you have also two different kind of mindsets. You have a platform that you're going to drive traffic to, like the Shopify stores and all that. You just give you the market, the platform for you to put your products on it, but it's on you to go in and market it. And you have those that you place a product on those platforms and they have already traffic, like the Amazons of the world. So you have to be clear about what kind of business you're in. Are you buying and selling, or you have your own product that you want to sell? And what kind of product, or what kind of business you want to promote? Is it your own platform or your products on a marketplace? Because if it's your own platform, then you have marketing costs. You have ad budgets. You have a team who's going to help you with the inventory, with the customer support, with the merchandising and all that. Do you have budget to go in and sell online? And if it's a marketplace, you'd have to go in and buy these products, which means you have to have enough capital to go in and buy them and then store them. So yes, it is a good time to be in a market and in online commerce. It's just a matter of what kind of business model you're going to implement, and do you have the finances to lift this business off the ground from scratch?
Absolutely. And to add to that, like, e-commerce is a complex space, right? So it's true that you have the demand, but if you don't have the right supply because borders are closed, or you don't have the right fleet management, it will impact your business. Okay, so we have some questions coming in. The first one, what type of new jobs, in your opinion, will be needed, either at corporates, government, or startups level?
New jobs. That's interesting. There's going to be, across the board, a lot of needs to be very, very data driven. And one aspect of businesses and disciplines, let me put it this way, that's going to become a lot more important is data analysis. So understanding how to manipulate data, how to use data, how to come up with useful information with numbers is going to be extremely important. And understanding, obviously, the languages like SQL, becoming proficient in SQL, is going to be a lot of demand for it globally. And that's the beauty of it, is a service that you can sell remotely. So if you're a great data analyst in the Middle East, you can offer the service to companies in Europe, for example. So there's going to be a lot of demand around data. Every decision has to be very data driven from now on, because it eliminates it reduces the risk of ambiguity.
We have another data-related question from Adham. He's asking, how can we utilize data science and behavioral sciences to start a consulting boutique directed towards small businesses?
Yeah, that's another good question. So we talk about the 1%, 2% conversion rate of selling online or online conversion. That is the average. This is the broad, very high level helicopter view of a conversion. At the core of it, you have different segments, different audiences that have different conversion rates. You have probably a cohort that has 10% conversion rate. And if you map out the life cycle, the different stages of a funnel, you're going to see drop-offs across the board. But also, you're going to see that this cohort has the highest retention across the board. So once you understand how to label the users across the funnel. Once you're able to understand how to create cohorts of customers, once you're able to understand how to use the data to improve the optimization across the board, which means how to do a lot of A/B testing at every step of the funnel, then that's going to be an excellent kind of profession consultants can offer for businesses who want to grow. So it's a combination of data, of automation, of segmentation, cohort analysis, and ultimately of split testing and working with the products, with the engineers, with the marketers, with the designers. This service of advanced growth strategy is going to boom from now on.
Absolutely. So another question along those lines about digital transformation. Obviously, a lot of companies are moving towards digital transformation of officers or manager. What does that really mean, and what type of skills does such a job need?
These are good questions. Again, what are you transforming? An offline business or an online business? Or are you transforming an online business to become more flexible in times of uncertainty? Normally, digital transformation is for businesses who are not utilizing all the benefits of online and digital solutions. It's an overhaul revamp of the core of the company, of the organization. It starts with understanding the processes and the systems. How much of it is automated? How much of it is documented? And how much of it is templatized? It's also a matter of sales transformation. How are you adapting to the new behavior of people who are all online right now? If you think about the sales, it was always about having a roster of potential leads. And if you're selling enterprise, it's about meeting them face to face. Right now, it's all about online. What does online mean? It means you have a 20-minute call at most with the person. So unless you're offering your A game in those 20 minutes, then you're not going to be able to sell and convince someone. So it also means, what is the sales cycle going to look like? What is the accounting part of it's going to look like? Because now everything is slowed down. What is the hiring going to look like? Because now all of a sudden you have a global pool of talent. What are the solutions you're offering to the market that are taking into account the current climate of the world? If you relied a lot on travel, what can you do now? What should you do? If you're a business, let's say you're in a wedding planning business, what are you going to do now? How are you going to transform the business? If you're about a banking system and banks are closed or they're no longer what banks used to be, what kind of online solution are you offering to the market? The other aspect of it that is going to be a very big, by the way, question about that was earlier mentioned is the design experience of the business. The standard has become much higher right now. It's not just a matter of being online. It's offering the best user experience for the end user. Because it became a global market right now, the standard became much higher. You're going to see another boom of UX, user experience designers. So unless you're transforming the business to be online to fit certain standards of user experience, you're not going to be able to satisfy the new pool of customers that are coming your way anymore. So it's a digital transformation across every aspect of the business.
Absolutely.
And it's not just one role. It starts from the head.
Yeah, and I think a lot of like the corporates who have been trying to incorporate digital transformation in their day-to-day, now they're facing the reality where they have to. The
reason why most fail is that they think of it as a nice to have. They think of it as, oh, we have our core business and we need to offer some digital transformation.
Exactly.
While now the nucleus has to be completely changed. It's the DNA, it's the culture, it's the existence of the business that need to adapt to the new world.
100%. So we have another question. What do you think will change in our working environment after COVID-19?
Everything. I've been working remotely and promoting the concept of the future of work, which is now. It's no longer a future. I've been working remotely for 14 years. all my teams were remote. I've been using Zoom for maybe 8 years now. The world discovered Zoom now. So what's going to change is this mindset that the business did, I mean, for those who survived, the business did survive with the whole remote work, to the point where even Facebook and all these big companies are planning, and I start executing up to 50% of the workforce, if not all of the workforce, to be completely remote. Twitter announced work from home is going to be permanent. You can work from home from anywhere, from anytime. It's not just now. And this changes everything, which means, why would I pay someone locally a premium when I can have access to experts and talent at a much lower rate? And let's say in the US, I can do that from Europe, from South America, from even Asian markets. Which means, why Silicon Valley should remain the same anymore?
Yeah.
So for you as an employee, let's say, or a person of skills, now you have access to a global pool of potential employers, which means the prices, the salary is going to go down. The expectation is going to go up, but the salary is going to go down, which changes the accounting system, the working system, the accountability system, culture that the company is going to completely change right now. How do you transfer culture over Zoom? And you're going to see a birth of always on video conferencing tools that allow people to think they're working together, and not just because you're talking to the person, you're going to have a call. You're going to have a screen that has always on cameras on people working together, so that they have a feel of working together. Legally, how do you hire somebody remotely? Do you open up a legal entity in a certain market, or you can hire them remotely without having a local entity in the market? If so, what do you do with the insurances? How can you offer insurances globally? So when you start thinking about the notion of a company, you start breaking the pattern that has been accumulating over the past 100 years of, we're in the information age. Why do we have to have an office? So what is the purpose of an office? What is the purpose of having a person coming to the office working with me when it's all about Zoom calls right now? So
yeah,
it starts with accepting there's a new reality, and it's not up to the employee to figure it out. It's up to the management to offer the solution, and together figure out what works for this company, what doesn't work for the company.
Yeah. I mean, speaking of this, on centralized decision making versus decentralized, during hard times, do you think that decision making in startups should be decentralized, or is it like the entrepreneur has to basically make a decision because they have to move fast in this case?
So decision making is always driven by, well, ideally should be always driven by data. So data knows no boundaries, data knows no bias. Data is data at the end of the day. And it's about the culture of the company. How open is the company to exposing some data to the staff? The smaller you are, the more you're going to have to open up. The bigger you are, it's going to be more of a challenge for data privacy and data breach. Normally, it's not a good practice to have one person or a small collection of people coming up with a decision, because the decision of a company impacts everyone. And if you're a big company, it impacts many organizations, many divisions within the company. So it's always a best practice to involve the different stakeholders and look at the data and come up with an informed decision about it. Right now, even more so, because you have less touch points with the employees around you. So it's very important to involve people in the decision, because some of them will have to impact. Right now, for example, my wife, she's working in an architectural company. They have regularly these large company-wide calls where they're informing the employees about the changes, but then they're opening up to listening to the employees about how these changes impact them, and together fine-tune this decision so that you have at least some general consensus about what makes sense and what works and what doesn't work.
Yeah. Okay, I have one last question. What do you think the new normal will be after COVID-19 in 2-3 years? It's very broad, but
it is very broad. I'm thinking about
yeah.
which angle. If you can elaborate more on which specific angle, because
So I think probably from, I mean, the startup space, on the startup space front, launching startups, being able to launch startup during a pandemic, and how will this be different in 2-3 years? Do you think that we're now more ready to face, because COVID came, you know, at a surprise. No one was expecting it. Do you think now that governments and founders are more equipped to face those challenges in 2-3 years time, and that's, you know, what would be the new normal?
So, like any relationship that breaks, it takes time to heal. What's happening right now, the world is breaking up from their old patterns and the way they were doing business, and the way they were running the world. Even if this is going to impact climate change, it's going to impact every topic that you know of that was running the world. So that's why it's going to take a few years for the shift to happen. And it's going to be a whole new world, new age, the post-COVID age, where information is going to play a critical role in the way the world's going to move forward. Data is going to play a critical role. Experience design is going to create a whole new world. And I'm going to give you a specific example. Why would I join a company as an employee that forces me to work from an office when you have many companies who are open to remote work? I know the benefits of remote work. I've been selling remote work for a long time. I've been hiring people based on the idea of freedom, location freedom. Why would I choose a company that's forcing me to work and commute and waste time in an office when I have options to work with a company that's hiring me from, let's say I'm in Beirut, hiring me from London? Why would I do that? So the conditions of work is going to change, which means the requirements from a company to offer benefits is going to change, which means comfort of remote selling, remote working, remote management, remote accountability, remote responsibility is going to change. The idea of trust is going to be critical. How do you trust people are working remotely? Do you enforce on them screen capture? Do you enforce on them these tools that are going to offer, you know, random screen capture of your screen just to prove that you're working? Which, by the way, is a good product to work, because a lot of people don't have it in them to trust people remotely. But how do you do that? How do you trust people remotely? So a lot of things are going to change, which means there's going to be the need. It's like having an exam where you don't have people monitoring you if you're cheating or not. Will people cheat or will people not cheat? Some will cheat, but how do you know they're cheating if you're not there? So
yeah. But I think trust is one important component to that as well, right? I mean, you have to trust your people.
It's a critical component, which means that the culture of the company is going to be critical for you to choose. Am I going to impose strict systems to monitor my staff or not? And again, you're working in a company. What kind of systems are you employing for accountability? And I'm asking the hiring manager, well, we have screen monitoring. Well, I'm not going to work in a company that offers screen monitoring. I'd rather work for a company that does not offer that. Because if you don't trust me, why would I trust you? Again, it's going to be part of the things that people are going to start getting accustomed to, because now you have a pool of companies that is global. It's not just, if I don't work with this architecture company in my city, then I don't have a job. Well, I can offer the service for a company in Japan now.
Yeah, absolutely. Trust is extremely important. And I think maybe the way it should be like deliverables, on a deliverables based, right? Are you doing your job or not? Are you delivering what you're supposed to do? And you're meeting your KPIs. Another question that we have here about data. Data is not always built on clear mechanism. What can an entrepreneur do to make sure data analysis system he or she is using is useful?
It's not clear for me what is the clear mechanism for build. There's certain.
How can you basically, I think if you want to basically go ahead with a data-driven startup, what is the framework, you know, you need to put in place for you to be able to capture the different data points that would drive decision making in your startup?
Well, I call it the plumbing of a company.
Mm.
When you're building a building, you have the infrastructure, and you have the plumbing, in order to make sure that the business does not collapse and it's, you know, functioning properly. The same thing happens with the business. What kind of data are you tracking? Are you measuring? But it's not about measuring every data point. It's about measuring the most critical points. You have vanity metrics that don't really matter. Like, for example, in the world of e-commerce, how many people come to our website, like impressions or page views? Who cares about page views? It's a matter of identifying the most critical funnel in your business. What are the most important elements in your business that you need to measure that determine whether your business is successful or not? And it's not just one point or one metric usually, it's several metrics. Make sure you're tagging these customers to understand what kind of personas, what kind of behaviors you're attracting to the right audience, so you can map these personas are driving the most business. So let me go get more of these people. And then make sure that the funnel is measured so they can optimize it against these different cohorts of people. So the beauty is that there's a lot of tools that offer that. They're not free, but they offer you enough value so you can have a positive ROI on them. Goes back to the data analyst. Do you have people who are specialized in data and automation you can hire so you can embed the plumbing and these tools in your business to track them? Another role that's going to become very important, like data analysis, automation, and all that. Another role that's going to be also as important is translation, English languages. As the world becomes more open and global, English is going to become very important. Because why can't I hire people remotely and pay less? Why can't I? I should be able to. But then I don't speak English. Well, why don't you learn English? Why don't you enforce English in the organization to be able to open up for a global pool of talent? Translation is going to be also important. Like in the practice of business, localization is going to be very, very important. My business right now, let's say, is not local. It's just addressing for, let's say, Arabic market. Well, I need to translate it to Spanish. I need to translate it to English. I need to translate it to Mandarin, maybe, in order to open up for a pool of talent that is global right now. And it's not just translation, it's localization, understanding the cultures and nuances and putting it in your business.
Yeah, so language is one of, part of the whole process of localization, but it's not all. Absolutely. So I don't think we have any more questions. Any last words, advice, Naji, to the entrepreneurs watching?
It is very difficult times on everyone. No, if someone tells you they have the answer, nobody has the answer. What I'm offering here is what I see the world is moving into, and I've been for the past period of time on point in terms of where I see the world's moving. Right now, I see it taking much longer than it being presented in the media, which means it's as important to focus on the business as important as to focus on your health, your mental health. It's very difficult. It's very easy to be positive when everything's going well. It's very difficult to be positive when things are not going well. Right now, it's critical for people to be equipped with positive mindset. However you want to develop your positive mindset, we can have a whole webinar on positivity. I'm very, very proponent of positivity and motivation and all that. But it's critical for you to start focusing on your psyche, on your morale, on staying positive, on eating well, on exercising, and not for the sake of just fitness. Exercising allows you to have a positive outlook because it changes your chemicals in the body. It allows you to sleep better, which also impacts your positive outlook. So
it releases any negativity you have.
It releases negativity. Going next to bodies of water, just taking some time to relax, to breathe, to slow down. Some people meditate. I listen to music. Walk. Isolate yourself. Turn off the news if you're always planning in front of the news. However you want to do it. There's a lot of ideas you can implement here. I can have a whole webinar with you guys to do it, but it's as critical for you to start focusing on your psyche, on your morale, as it is to focus on the business outlook and everything that has to do with the business. Unless you're positive, it's gonna be a downward spiral in your life. So the most important critical component in order for you to navigate through this whole ambiguity in the process of recovery is your morale, your psyche, your positive mindset, your motivation. If you're not motivated, your staff will not be motivated. Your family will be impacted. Your parents will be impacted. Your spouse will be impacted. It's critical. I cannot stress this enough. Don't be driven by biased people who have a platform to go to, the media, to influence you in a certain agenda that benefits them because they're not as stressed and as pressured as you, whether it's for political agendas or economical agendas. They're not living your life. Don't be fooled by their empty promises. When they say we're going to have a recovery in 6 months, don't be fooled by that. Plan for 2 years. The last point that in the summary is focus on your morale, on motivation, on positive outlook before you do anything else.
Absolutely, because it really impacts every single thing you do in life. Thank you so much, Naji. That was very helpful. Thank you so much. And this
My pleasure. Thank you, guys. Thank you for attending, and good luck. Be safe, everyone. Wear the mask.